Welcome, Seeker.
Beneath the restless tides of the ocean lies a silence older than memory. A silence that carries with it whispers of a lost world. A civilization said to have flourished long before the first stone of Egypt was laid, before the first word of the Vedas was spoken, before the myths of Greece were carved into verse. That world is Atlantis. Was it a radiant empire of crystal spires, shining harbors, and temples to the gods? A land where wisdom and science blended seamlessly, and humanity reached a level of mastery we can scarcely imagine today? Or was it a cautionary tale, an allegory created to remind us that every civilization, no matter how glorious, is vulnerable to pride, corruption, and collapse? The mystery of Atlantis is unlike any other. It has haunted the imagination of poets, philosophers, mystics, and seekers for over 2,000 years. Plato, the great philosopher of Athens, was the first to write of it, describing a mighty island kingdom beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. In a single night of fire and flood, he tells us, this civilization vanished beneath the sea, leaving only fragments of memory behind. But was Plato inventing a myth or preserving a secret? Across cultures, echoes of a sunken golden age persist. The Egyptians spoke of Zep Tepi, the first time, when gods walked with men and divine knowledge flourished before being swept away. The Sumerians told of antediluvian kings, whose reigns stretched back tens of thousands of years, until a great flood brought their age to an end. Even the peoples of the Americas, from the Maya to the Hopi, remember ancestors who came from a land destroyed by water. Could all these fragments point to the same story? Atlantis, then, is not merely a lost city, it is a mirror. A myth that reflects both the highest aspirations of humanity and its deepest shadows. It represents the dream of what we could become if wisdom and power walked hand in hand, and the nightmare of what we risk when power outruns wisdom. And perhaps this is why the myth refuses to die. For every age must confront the same question. Can we rise without destroying ourselves? In this journey, we will travel deep into the labyrinth of myth, history, and esoteric philosophy. We will uncover how Plato's tale may have encoded truths far beyond allegory. We will trace the Atlantean echo through Egyptian temples, Mesopotamian tablets, and ancient American myths. We will examine the possibility that Atlantis is not only a historical place, but also a spiritual archetype, an eternal symbol of lost wisdom, waiting to be rediscovered. But more than that, we will ask, what does Atlantis mean for us today? Because whether it was real or not, the lessons of Atlantis are alive. We, too, stand at a precipice. Our world is filled with great technological wonders, yet it trembles beneath the weight of greed, imbalance, and unchecked ambition. Are we destined to repeat the fate of Atlantis, swallowed by our own excess? Or can we rise to something higher, learning from the wisdom hidden in the ruins of myth? This is not just the story of a vanished city. It is the story of civilization itself, the cycles of rise and fall, light and shadow, memory and forgetting. It is the story of humanity reaching for the divine, only to be pulled back into the depths. So, was Atlantis real? Or is it the greatest parable ever told? Perhaps the truth is both. A civilization once lived and perished, but its memory lingers, not as stone or ruin, but as a seed buried in the ocean of the collective human soul. Tonight, we dive into those waters. And what we find there may reveal not only the secrets of our past, but the shape of our future. And if you wish to walk further into these mysteries, subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and keep your curiosity alive, for curiosity is the first breath of awakening. The story of Atlantis, as far as history records, begins in the dialogues of Plato, Timaeus, and Critias. Written in the 4th century BCE, these dialogues present Atlantis as a real place, told to Solon, the great Athenian lawgiver, during his visit to Egypt centuries before. The Egyptian priests of Sais, Plato says, revealed to Solon a tale far older than Greece itself, the rise and fall of a great island kingdom that once sought to dominate the world. Plato describes Atlantis as larger than Libya and Asia combined, situated beyond the Pillars of Hercules. It was a radiant kingdom, blessed with fertile soil, advanced technology, and divine kings descended from Poseidon himself. Yet despite its divine origin, its people grew corrupt. Ambition poisoned wisdom, and greed consumed balance. When Atlantis turned its armies against the rest of the known world, the gods judged it unworthy. In a single night of fire and flood, the island sank beneath the waves, never to rise again. For centuries, scholars debated whether Plato's account was allegory or truth. Many argued it was a philosophical parable, an invented story, used to illustrate the dangers of hubris and the fragility of empires. But if that were so, why did Plato insist, repeatedly, that it was true? Why did he anchor the tale with precise geography, genealogies of kings, and even a timeline reaching back 9,000 years before his own era? To the Egyptians, 9,000 years was not exaggeration, but memory. Their civilization stretched back into shadows so deep that even the Greeks, proud of their learning, were seen as children. Could it be that Plato's Atlantis was not a fiction, but a faint glimpse into the true antiquity of human history? An antiquity erased by time and catastrophe? Across the world, flood myths resound with eerie similarity. The Bible speaks of Noah and the deluge that wiped away all but a remnant. The Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh recounts Utnapishtim, the survivor of a great flood sent by the gods. In Hindu cosmology, Manu is warned by the fish god Matsya of a coming flood and builds a great ark. The Hopi of North America tell of worlds destroyed by water before humanity was guided into the present age. Are these coincidences? Or are they fragments of the same great memory, a primal catastrophe that swept away entire civilizations, leaving only myths to carry the truth forward? Atlantis, then, becomes not only the story of a single land, but the archetype of a forgotten age before the flood. An age when humanity may have reached heights of wisdom, only to be swept into the abyss of its own undoing. Beyond history lies philosophy. To the esoteric traditions, Atlantis was more than a lost island. It was a cycle in the great unfolding of human evolution. The theosophists of the 19th century, such as Helena Blavatsky, spoke of Atlantis as one of the great root races of humanity, a stage of spiritual development when mankind's psychic and technological powers were immense, but unbalanced. According to this vision, Atlantis was destroyed not simply by geological accident, but by spiritual law. Civilizations that misuse their gifts invite their own downfall. In Hermeticism, Atlantis becomes the symbol of the macrocosm and microcosm, the eternal truth that as civilizations rise and fall, so too do individuals. The city swallowed by the sea mirrors the soul drowned in its own passions. The luminous temples of Atlantis reflect the inner temple we are called to build. Its destruction is not only history, it is a warning written into the architecture of existence itself. And yet, there is also hope in this symbol, for the seed of Atlantis does not die. Esoteric traditions whisper that fragments of Atlantean wisdom survived, carried to Egypt, where it seeded the mysteries of the Nile, to Mesopotamia, where it became the knowledge of the Magi, and even to the Americas, where echoes can be heard in the calendar cycles of the Maya and the star lore of the Hopi. In this sense, Atlantis is not gone. It is everywhere hidden in myths, encoded in symbols, waiting to be remembered. But if Atlantis was real, or if it contained truths essential to humanity, why has it been buried beneath the sands of time? The answer may be that certain knowledge is too dangerous when placed in unready hands. The legend tells us that Atlantis perished because power outpaced wisdom. If fragments of its science survived, technologies of energy, consciousness, or cosmic alignment, Would they not have been veiled, guarded, kept for initiates alone? This is the role of mystery schools throughout history. The priests of Egypt, the sages of India, the shamans of the Americas all preserved fragments of something older, but wrapped them in symbol and secrecy. Atlantis, in this way, becomes the hidden chapter of human history, one too perilous to hand freely to the unprepared. And so, it passed into myth, a myth powerful enough to survive millennia, yet obscure enough to conceal its most dangerous secrets. Was Atlantis a real civilization swallowed by the sea, or a myth born of philosophy? Perhaps it was both. A civilization once lived, but its memory became more than history. It became archetype. Atlantis is the story of what humanity gains and loses, what it remembers and forgets. It is the reminder that all golden ages are fragile, that wisdom must temper power, and that civilizations, like individuals, walk a razor's edge between illumination and destruction. And that is why we still speak of Atlantis. Not because we seek a city at the bottom of the ocean, but because Atlantis is within us, our greatest potential and our greatest peril. To understand Atlantis, we must first imagine its world, not as ruins scattered on the ocean floor, but as a living civilization at the height of its power. Plato describes a radiant kingdom divided into concentric rings of land and water, an architectural marvel that reflected harmony with the cosmos. Bridges spanned the canals, temples glittered with precious metals, and colossal statues towered above the people. The Atlanteans, descended from gods and mortals, lived in a society of abundance. Their lands overflowed with crops. Their mines yielded orichalcum, a metal said to gleam like fire, and their fleets sailed across the oceans, trading with distant nations. This was not a primitive age. It was an age of power, balance, and vision. Some accounts, especially from later esoteric traditions, even suggest the Atlanteans mastered sciences that we today would call impossible. Manipulation of energy, the use of crystals to store and transmit power, technologies of levitation and healing that blurred the line between science and magic. But if Atlantis was a golden age, it was also a fragile one. Plato tells us that in the beginning, the kings of Atlantis ruled with justice, guided by divine law. They understood balance, the hermetic principle that true power must serve harmony, not ambition. Yet as generations passed, that balance faltered. The divine spark grew dim. The Atlanteans, once noble, became intoxicated by their wealth and conquests. Their hunger for dominion stretched beyond their own shores, and they turned their gaze towards subjugating the entire world. It is here that the myth of Atlantis becomes universal. For every civilization rises in light, but risks falling into shadow. The very qualities that build greatness, ambition, vision, power, can also sow destruction when untethered from wisdom. The end came swiftly, as it so often does in myth. The island of Atlantis, Plato wrote, was swallowed up by the sea in a single day and night of misfortune. The gods themselves, he claimed, intervened. Where once the Atlanteans stood tall, the ground split, the waters rose, and fire erupted. The empire that stretched across oceans was reduced to whispers in the wind and silence beneath the waves. But here lies the great mystery. Was this simply an allegory, or did Plato's account preserve the echo of a real geological catastrophe? Modern science acknowledges that at the end of the last ice age, around 11,600 years ago, the same timeline Plato gives vast floods swept across the earth. Melting glaciers poured into the seas, raising ocean levels by hundreds of feet. Coastal lands vanished. Entire cultures could have been erased without a trace. Could Atlantis have been one of them? Esoteric traditions say yes. They tell us that the cataclysm was not merely geological, but karmic, cosmic balancing act. A civilization that misused its gifts brought ruin upon itself. In this sense, Atlantis becomes both history and parable, a warning that when wisdom is abandoned, no empire, however mighty, can endure. But what if not all was lost? Throughout history, there are tantalizing clues, scattered fragments of knowledge that seem out of place in their time. The precision of the Great Pyramid of Giza, aligned with the stars. The advanced mathematics encoded in Mayan calendars. The megalithic stones of Pumapunku in Bolivia, cut with uncanny accuracy. Could these be remnants of Atlantean science, carried across the world by survivors of the flood? Some traditions say yes, that priests and sages fled Atlantis before its destruction, carrying with them the seed of its wisdom. In Egypt, they became the keepers of the mystery schools. In Mesopotamia, they became the Magi. In the Americas, they became the culture bringers remembered as feathered serpents and sky beings. This is why Atlantis continues to haunt our imagination. It is not only a story of loss, it is the suggestion that humanity once possessed a knowledge now forgotten, and that fragments of it still lie hidden in the myths, monuments, and symbols scattered across the earth. But beyond history and speculation lies the deeper truth. Atlantis is an archetype, a story about the human condition itself. Every one of us carries within us the seed of Atlantis, the potential for brilliance and the temptation of downfall. The luminous city mirrors the luminous mind, filled with treasures and power. But if we surrender to greed, ambition, or imbalance, the inner Atlantis too will sink, drowned in chaos. This is why the esoteric traditions return again and again to the Atlantis myth. It is not simply about a lost island. It is about the eternal cycle of rise, corruption, and renewal. It is about the razor's edge between enlightenment and ruin. And so, when we speak of Atlantis, we are not speaking only of an ancient civilization swallowed by the sea. We are speaking of ourselves, of the civilizations we build, and of the choices that determine whether we too will sink beneath the waters of history or rise to create something enduring, something aligned with the eternal laws of harmony. Atlantis is a mirror, a memory, a warning, and perhaps a key. Because if fragments of its wisdom remain hidden in plain sight, then to rediscover Atlantis is not only to uncover the past, but to awaken the future. If this journey stirs something in you, make sure to subscribe to Labyrinth of the Veiled as we continue decoding ancient truths in a modern age. Share your thoughts and comment below. Atlantis has always been more than a tale of geography. It is a spiritual allegory encoded in myth. For the Hermetic tradition, the story of Atlantis is not only about a sunken island, but about the eternal rhythms of the universe: creation, flourishing, decline, and rebirth. Hermeticism teaches that the cosmos is governed by timeless principles, laws that shape both the movement of galaxies and the destinies of civilizations. When viewed through this lens, Atlantis becomes a living parable of these very laws. The Atlanteans, we are told, once lived in harmony with divine law. Their city, arranged in concentric circles, mirrored the cosmic order the heavens reflected in stone and water. This is the principle of correspondence. As above, so below. Atlantis, at its height, was not just a physical kingdom. It was the embodiment of cosmic harmony. Every canal, every temple, every ritual reflected a balance between spirit and matter. To walk through its streets was to walk through a living mandala of the universe itself. Yet as they turned away from this balance, the reflection broke. The order that once echoed the heavens became distorted, and in breaking correspondence with the divine, the Atlanteans condemned themselves to fall. The destruction of Atlantis also illustrates another Hermetic law: cause and effect. Nothing happens by chance, and no civilization collapses without cause. According to esoteric teachings, Atlantis was not destroyed by the wrath of angry gods, but by the inevitable consequences of imbalance. The misuse of power, whether in war, in greed, or in the manipulation of forces they did not fully control, set in motion a chain of effects that culminated in cataclysm. This is why Atlantis remains so haunting. because it reveals that knowledge, without wisdom, carries within it the seed of ruin. Just as individuals reap the fruits of their actions, so too do nations. So too does humanity itself. Hermeticism also speaks of the principle of rhythm, that everything flows, rises, and falls like the tides of the sea. Civilizations, like empires of the mind, are subject to this cosmic breathing. Atlantis was not the first golden age, nor will it be the last. It is one cycle in an eternal rhythm of ascent and decline. What sinks will rise again, and what rises must one day fall. For the initiate, the sinking of Atlantis is not tragedy, but transformation. Just as night follows day, the fall of one age prepares the ground for the birth of another. In this way, the lost wisdom of Atlantis may not be lost at all. It simply waits beneath the surface, ready to resurface in another form, in another cycle. Beyond cosmic law, Atlantis also functions as a mirror of the human soul. In its radiant beginning, Atlantis represents the state of spiritual purity we all carry within us, the golden city at the heart of our being. The decline into greed and corruption symbolizes the moment when the ego overpowers the spirit, when the inner harmony collapses. And the great flood? It is the descent into the unconscious, the drowning of the higher self beneath the waters of illusion and forgetfulness. But here lies the hidden promise. Even when Atlantis sinks, it is not destroyed. Its essence remains, hidden beneath the waters, waiting for us to rediscover it. This is the path of initiation, the reclaiming of the lost city within. Every seeker who embarks on this spiritual journey is, in truth, searching for Atlantis, not in the sea, but in the depths of the soul. Throughout history, many mystery schools have whispered that the wisdom of Atlantis survived. In Egypt, the teachings of Thoth, later Hermes Trismegistus, were said to preserve fragments of Atlantean science. The Emerald Tablet itself, foundation of Hermetic philosophy, is rumored to be the echo of this lost knowledge. In this sense, Hermeticism becomes the heir of Atlantis. Its principles are not abstract philosophy, but the distilled essence of a civilization that once lived and perished by them. To study Hermetic law is, in a way, to study Atlantis itself. What then is Atlantis, if not a warning as much as a memory? It tells us that no civilization, however great, can defy the laws of the cosmos. It tells us that brilliance without balance leads only to collapse. And it tells us that wisdom is not measured by knowledge alone, but by the harmony with which that knowledge is wielded. Atlantis is a mirror in which we see both our greatest potential and our gravest danger. It is the story of what we once were, what we might become, and what we must avoid repeating. And perhaps, hidden within its myth, is also the key to our survival if we dare to listen. So what does the story of Atlantis mean for us here, now, in the modern world? It is tempting to think of Atlantis only as a lost continent, a relic of the past. But Hermetic wisdom reminds us the true value of myth lies not in where it happened, but in what it teaches. The fall of Atlantis is not just a warning to ancient kings, it is a warning to us. For we too live in an age of great power. Our technology has unlocked forces as unimaginable to us as crystal energy and skyships might have been to the ancients. We command the atom, the algorithm, the genetic code. Like the Atlanteans, we stand at the height of brilliance. But the Hermetic principle of cause and effect whispers, every choice creates a consequence. If knowledge outpaces wisdom, if greed outweighs balance, then the rhythm of rise and fall may one day repeat. Hermeticism teaches that the outer world reflects the inner. Just as Atlantis declined when its people fell into disharmony, so too do our societies mirror our collective inner states. The lesson is clear. If we wish to avoid the fate of Atlantis, we must begin not only with grand political changes, but with ourselves. To cultivate inner harmony is to plant seeds of harmony in the world. Every time we choose clarity over confusion, kindness over cruelty, balance over excess, we are rebuilding Atlantis, not in the ocean, but in the soul of humanity. The principle of rhythm tells us that life moves in cycles of expansion and contraction, joy and sorrow, success and loss. Atlantis teaches us to accept these tides without fear. When things rise, we can enjoy them without clinging. When they fall, we can endure them with faith that the cycle will turn again. This is not fatalism, it is wisdom. To align with rhythm is to flow with the river instead of fighting against its current. The Atlanteans forgot this law. Perhaps we can remember it. Atlantis also lives within. When you quiet the noise of the world and listen inwardly, you may sense the echo of a radiant city beneath the waters of your own mind. This is your higher self, waiting to be rediscovered. Meditation, contemplation, and self-discipline are the keys to uncovering these ruins. Think of every spiritual practice as the clearing away of ocean silt, revealing the shining temples of wisdom hidden within you. The lost city is not gone, it is buried, waiting for you to raise it from the depths. The Hermetic view of Atlantis is both cautionary and hopeful. It warns us that no civilization can endure if it turns from balance, but it also offers hope that wisdom is never truly lost. The flame of Atlantis burns on in Hermetic teachings, in the mystery schools, and most importantly, in the human heart. If we learn to live by these principles: balance, rhythm, cause and effect, correspondence, then perhaps we will not repeat the mistakes of Atlantis, but instead fulfill its promise. The lost city may never rise again from the sea, but the spirit of Atlantis can rise within us, reborn, renewed, and eternal. And if you wish to continue walking the hidden path, subscribe. There are more mysteries to uncover, more truths to reclaim, more light to remember. And so, the tale of Atlantis is not just the story of a vanished land, but a mirror held before the face of humanity. Every generation, every civilization, every soul faces the same test. Will we rise to wisdom, or will we collapse under the weight of our own brilliance? The Atlanteans were not strangers, they were us. Their triumphs, their hubris, their downfall, all echo in our modern age. Hermetic philosophy whispers that nothing is ever truly lost. Energy transforms, wisdom hides, truth awaits rediscovery. Atlantis may rest beneath the waves, but its essence endures in the teachings of Hermes, in the symbols scattered through ancient texts, and in the quiet intuition that tells you there is more to this world than meets the eye. Perhaps Atlantis never sank at all. Perhaps it descended into another plane of existence, waiting for those prepared to walk the path of balance to find it again. Or perhaps, more profoundly, Atlantis is a symbol of the kingdom within the enlightened state of being that rises when we harmonize with universal law. The question is not whether Atlantis existed. The real question is, will we repeat its fate, or will we fulfill its promise? The story of Atlantis invites you to look both outward and inward, to study the mysteries of forgotten ages, and to rediscover the radiant city that lies within your own depths. For as the Hermetic axiom reminds us, as above, so below, as within, so without. If these teachings stir something within you, if they awaken that ancient memory you cannot quite name, then you are part of the great work of remembering. This channel, Labyrinth of the Veiled, is devoted to unveiling these mysteries and walking deeper into the hidden currents of wisdom. If you wish to journey further, subscribe and share your reflections in the comments below. And as you leave this exploration, I ask you one final question. When the tides of history rise again, will humanity sink into the ocean of forgetfulness, or will we finally rise, carrying the torch of Atlantis into a new dawn?